Aloha, and welcome to our Research and Writing RaW Skills Workshop series. My name is Rebecca, and I'm the Learning and Success Coordinator at the Noeau Center. Joining me for this presentation is Robin Tasaka, the Tutor Coordinator at Noeau. This is our final episode of the RaW Skills series, Citations and Polishing. In this episode, you'll utilize strategies to assist you in forming citations and a page with references, identify methods to revise your writing, and discover resources to aid you in finishing touches before you submit your final draft. As you go through this episode, please complete the quiz questions as we direct you to them. The quiz can be found below this video. We are in the last step of the writing process, which is on polishing your writing and ensuring that your citations are formatted correctly. What are citations, you ask? Citations tell readers that certain arguments, quotes, or ideas originated from another author's work. Together, your in-text citations and your reference list show readers how you built your argument. Citing information is important because it shows that the phenomena or issues that you are arguing that are important are being supported by outside scholars. Citing outside sources also helps to discern which part of your paper is your thoughts and which parts are the thoughts of outside authors. Citing also helps to reinforce what scholars within that field are discussing, or even not discussing. When using direct quotes, it is assumed that an in-text citation is necessary. However, when paraphrasing other authors' ideas, that should also be cited as well. Just remember, when in doubt, cite it out. If it's not common knowledge to a general audience or the audience in your field, you should probably cite it. Common knowledge is essentially information that is widely accepted as truth, and the average reader would not need to look up the information to verify its accuracy. Now I want you to tell me which of these listed items is common knowledge. If you're completing this video for credit, please pause the video here and answer questions 2, 3, and 4 on the quiz. Okay, on to the format of citations. In-text citations can come in paraphrases, which are short summaries of sources you're using in your paper, or a direct quote. Whatever you cite in your paper should also be in your reference list, and whatever is in your reference list should also be in your paper. No part should exist alone. APA, ASA, Chicago Manual or CMS, and MLA are the various citation styles that are used in classes with writing assignments at UH West Oahu. If you're learning to tackle a new citation style required for a paper, or you just need a refresher, the library has created a guide in providing information on how to cite in those various citation styles. These guides inform you about all parts of the citation style, whether it's formatting, to how to provide an in-text citation depending on how many authors there are. Let's walk through a commonly used citation style in college writing when formatting references. APA style. In APA style, books are usually formatted with the last name of the author, a comma, then the first initial of their first name. The next piece of information needed is the year the book was published, which is placed in parentheses. The title of the book is to be followed in all italics. Notice that only the first letter of the first word is capitalized. All following words should be lowercase unless it comes after a punctuation or colon or is a proper noun. The city and country of publication, followed by the name of the publisher, is the last piece of information needed. For other source types, such as journal articles or websites, head to the library guide link at guides.westoahu.hawaii.edu/citing. Now it's your turn to practice in creating a reference citation. If you're completing this episode for credit, pause the video here and answer questions 6 through 10.
We're going to shift gears now to talk about revisions and editing. The most important thing is to allow yourself enough time for revisions and editing. We often develop the bad habit of drafting at the last minute, but allowing time for revision and editing can actually help with writer's block and procrastination. For me, knowing that I will spend time on revision and editing later helps me to not stress out so much about my draft. When I draft, I don't need to make it perfect because I know I will fix it later. As far as the differences between revisions and editing, a lot of times people talk about the two as if they are the same thing, and there's definitely some overlap. But thinking about the differences between revision and editing can help you to be more thorough in this process and allow enough time for this process. Thinking about the differences between revisions and editing also helps us to consider different parts of the process and how much time to allow ourselves. So revisions tend to be more large scale, while editing is more small scale. Revisions are often done recursively throughout the writing process, meaning that it is common and helpful to go back and forth between drafting and revising. Editing, on the other hand, is usually done more toward the end of the writing process. In order to understand revision, it is helpful to break the word into its parts. Revision literally means re-seeing, seeing again, or looking again at your draft, looking at it in a different way. I hope you can see how this can lead to bigger changes and more dramatic overhauls of drafts. Editing, on the other hand, includes things like proofreading, those final read-throughs before you submit a draft, where you're looking for careless errors and small details like commas and spelling. This graphic and these acronyms are intended to help you remember the major differences between revising and editing. When you think of revising, think of arms. And when you think of editing, think of cups. You carry small things in cups and larger things in arms. So when we're talking about revising and arms, we're talking about adding, removing, moving, and substituting big things like paragraphs, sentences, arguments, and sources. Maybe you're reading through your draft and you realize that there's a big piece of the argument that you forgot to include. Maybe you decide you want to add in a source to support a certain part of your argument. Or you meant to add a paragraph about the history but forgot. At the same time, you might be removing paragraphs, sections, or sources that you realize don't belong. Maybe you decide the entire history doesn't need to be included, or that something you wrote doesn't fit with your main argument. I know it can be scary or discouraging to take out things that you've written. For a lot of us, it's hard to write. We work so hard on our writing that we don't want to throw any of it away. But sometimes that will make our writing stronger. So what I like to do is, instead of deleting it completely, I'll just take it out and move it to a notes section at the end of my paper, or a notes file. This way I can keep it just in case I want it back later on. Revision also includes moving or reorganizing things. What might happen is that you realize that the way you organized your information the first time isn't the best way to help readers understand your point. You might find that a source belongs in another section or in multiple sections. And revision includes substituting as well, so pulling things out and putting things in.
CUPS is an acronym that stands for capitalization, usage, punctuations, and spelling. These are all smaller scale items. This should be done after you've covered the higher order items in ARMS. This might occur the week before or the week of your paper assignment deadline.
We want you to spend a little bit of time reflecting on your process. For a major writing assignment, how much time do you typically spend revising, proofreading, and/or editing? What revision, editing, or proofreading strategies do you use? If you're completing this quiz for class credit, pause the video here and complete questions 11 and 12 in the quiz. No matter the strategies you already use, I want to make a few general recommendations. Work with a hard copy. Somehow, when you work with a hard copy, you can catch things that you don't see on screen. Working with a hard copy also allows you to circle areas where you think there might be issues and then come back to these areas later to try to figure out what the problem might be. Another tip is to work with a friend. Sometimes we think reorganizing our draft in a certain way might help, but we're not sure. This is when a second opinion is always helpful. Friends, classmates, and tutors are great at giving second opinions. And if you're still not sure, get a third opinion. It is also helpful to read aloud. Sometimes when we read our writing, we're reading what we want our paper to say rather than what is actually on the paper. Reading aloud forces you to slow down and helps you to read what is actually on the paper. Reading aloud can also help you to see your draft with fresh eyes or to identify run-on sentences. If you run out of breath when reading a sentence, maybe the sentence is too long. The last tip is to take breaks. The goal of revision is to see things with fresh eyes. So if you have the time to put your draft aside for a few days or a few hours, that can be very helpful. Revising, editing, and proofreading can also be difficult, tiring, or boring, and these tasks require you to pay close attention to what you're doing. Taking breaks can help you to come back to the work with more energy and focus. Next, we're going to try out a revision strategy called the believing and doubting game. First, we're going to read through our draft imagining we are our strongest supporter, maybe a family member, friend, or teacher who is always encouraging us, who always sees. Next, we're going to try out a revision strategy called the believing and doubting game. First, we're going to read through our draft imagining we are our strongest supporter, maybe a family member, friend, or teacher who is always encouraging us, who always sees the best in us. You're going to read through as this person and put plus signs next to the sentences that you found most convincing. Next, you're going to read through your draft a second time. This time, you're going to read through as a skeptic. Again, maybe you have a friend, family member, or teacher who's always challenging you, always pushing you to explain more. Or they don't believe what you say and you have to convince them further. Read through as that person and put check marks next to the parts where you're most skeptical. The idea is that you can then use these markings to revise. You can feel good about those parts where you were convincing and focus on strengthening those parts that need to be more persuasive. Do you need more evidence? Do you need to change the way it's worded? We're going to have you practice with a sample passage. Pause the video here and complete questions 13 and 14 in the quiz. For more revision activities, you can download the handout linked below this video.
Editing is focusing on the details, so it is on a smaller scale. Editing is also done during the final stages of writing. When editing or applying cups, the focus is on grammar areas that you tend to struggle with. It might be comma splices, where you split up two independent sentences with a comma instead of a period, or you realize that your sentences are 4 to 5 lines long. Because editing and proofreading are in the details, it should be done in sections. Breaking them up into paragraphs at a time and reading each sentence slowly can help you see what might look awkward on paper and hear what sounds awkward when read aloud. If you have a 10-page paper, don't expect to be able to edit it in one sitting. You are human, your eyes can and will get exhausted, and it's much more likely that you'll let more errors slide by. Allow yourself time to read through and ensure your paper is as grammar error-free as possible. Another good strategy is to have a fresh pair of eyes look at your paper. This could be done with a tutor at the No'eau Center, your classmates, a family member, or friend. If you don't have a fresh pair of eyes readily available, you can try this free tool. This is the Hemingway app. This app looks at the grammatical structure of your sentences and highlights areas where you might be using a passive voice or if some sentences might be difficult to read. On behalf of the rest of the RaW Skills team, I would just like to say mahalo for joining us on this 4-part journey. We hope that your research and writing process has improved and look forward to all of the amazing things you'll write. Happy writing!